You're listening to Coffee and Sports from Wire to Wire Sports Network on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong, don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. Yeah, we're lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page. But we still read that book, and we still run that race. Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out, till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay, red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 No time to chill, don't sweat it.
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine. I am Chris, and I am here to get your Tuesday morning going. Let's start with this, shall we? Last night, of course, we had the NFL, we had Monday Night Football, and we had the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, if you did not watch the game last night, you are going to take a look at the headlines this morning, and you are going to take a look at the box score and the end result, and you are going to say, oh, there it is. Close game, but once again, the Chiefs do the Chiefs. The Chiefs get the victory. You're going to give the Bucs an attaboy for it only being a one-score game. You might look at it and say, oh, look at that. It went to overtime. Good for Baker. Good for the Bucs. But, you know, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the Chiefs, and you're going to move on. And if that's the tact you're going to take this morning, then you're just not giving the Buccaneers the credit that they are due. Because you have to remember, first of all, I picked the Chiefs to win last night. Mo picked the Chiefs to win last night. But I think one of the major reasons that Mo and I both were so confident in the Kansas City Chiefs last night had more to do with what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not have. And what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not have last night was not one, but both of their Pro Bowl starting wide receivers. And nothing against Baker Mayfield, because as you guys know, I love me some Baker Mayfield. So this is no slight on Baker, because if anybody is on the Baker train, ladies and gentlemen, it is I. I am fully on the Baker Mayfield train. So this is not a slight against my boy Baker Mayfield. This is simply a situation of how many quarterbacks in the NFL can you take away their number one wide receiver and their number two wide receiver, especially when the wide receivers are the quality of a Mike Evans and a Chris Godwin, and they turn around and beat an undefeated team like the Kansas City Chiefs, and they turn around and defeat a good team like the Kansas City Chiefs, and they turn around and they can defeat a championship contending team like the Kansas City Chiefs? And the answer is not many. I mean, look across the NFL landscape right now and ask yourself, How many teams, how many quarterbacks? We talk on the morning show all the time about the idea of quarterbacks being overcomers. And we talk about how there are certain guys in the league that can overcome, and there are certain guys in the league that cannot overcome. It takes a lot to overcome your top wide receiver not being there. I mean, think about that for a second. Think about how different some quarterbacks in the NFL are when they lose their number one wide receiver, much less their number one and their number two. Can you even name who's next on the receiving depth chart after Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? If you are not a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would argue that you probably could not do that. Like, do it right now. As you're sitting here right now listening to the sound of my voice, if I came into your home right now and I put a briefcase down on the table and I said, here it is. Let me open it up for you real quick. We got $1 million. $1 million in this briefcase. All you have to do is list for me a starting wide receiver that plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that is not named Mike Evans and that is not named Chris Godwin. Who is it going to be? Could you do it? If you are not a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, could you do it? Now, if you play fantasy football, there's a chance you might be able to do it because maybe you've looked at their wide receiver units since the injuries have taken place, asking yourself, who am I going to start? Can I take advantage of the injuries over there? Maybe you have. But here is what their wide receiver unit looks like without those two names. Sterling Shepard. We know that name, former Giants wide receiver. That is their number one option. Sterling Shepard, followed by Ryan Miller. They also got Trey Palmer over there. Maybe that name rings a bell. Jalen McMillan, Raheem Jarrett. Those are their wide receiving options right now down there in Tampa Bay. That's who Baker Mayfield is throwing the football to outside of Cade Otton, who is their tight end, who had a great night, by the way, last night. Cade Otton, I believe he caught 7 or 8 balls. He had over 100 yards, had himself a touchdown. But that is their wide receiving unit. So to go into that game without your number one and your number two option, and you're going against the Kansas City Chiefs, the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs, on Monday Night Football in Kansas City. Taylor Swift is going to be there. All the lights, all the national attention. It was going to be an uphill battle for the Buccaneers last night. And they were up for the task. And that's what I am focusing on this morning because, I expected the Chiefs to win the football game. In fact, I would have put money on the Chiefs winning it going away, not it going to overtime, not the Bucs coming up at the end and possibly putting themselves in a position at the end of the game to go for 2 or not go for 2 and potentially win the game in regulation. I didn't think we were going to be in that spot. I thought this was a situation where you were looking at a 14 to 17 point Chiefs victory. Because again, in my head, against, by the way, a pretty underrated defense in Kansas City, I had to ask myself, how are they going to score points? Who is he going to throw the football to? They're not going to run the ball against the Chiefs. Chiefs have an underrated run defense. So how are they going to even put points on the board? And they did. And credit to Baker Mayfield, credit to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're going to look at the NFL standings this morning, and most people around the NFL circles, because again, there's no such thing as a moral victory in the NFL, right? So you're going to look at it, and you're going to give the credit to the Chiefs. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the Chiefs, but if you're looking at it from the perspective of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this morning, it's one of those things. I know they've lost 3 in a row. They started off 4-2. They're now sitting at 4-5. I don't classify this loss as I classify the other two on this losing streak. This was a game that they played well enough to win. This was a game that, despite the injuries, despite everything, Baker played well enough to win. And I get it. It's the NFL. It doesn't matter if you played well enough to win. You actually have to win the football. I get all of that. But you look at performances and you look at what a team could be moving forward. And I look at this game and I say, okay, I know the Bucs have lost 3 in a row, right? And I know they're sitting there in their division and they got the Panthers and the Saints below them. They got the Falcons above them. And maybe the Falcons were always going to be the favorite to win this division. I picked the Bucs to win this division. But you start looking out at the landscape of what the Bucs have coming up on their schedule. And now you have to start to ask yourself, okay, well, they've just lost 3 in a row. Well, who do they lose to? They lost to the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. That's probably the second best team in the AFC. They lost a close game at home to division rival Atlanta. Okay. That's a good team as well. And they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay. I know. At some point, you got to beat good teams. I get it. But let's look at what is on the schedule moving forward for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got the Niners at home this week. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to beat the 49ers, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a competitive football game. But let's say they lose to the Niners. Let's say they lose to the Niners and they fall to 4-6. Then their next 3 games are the Giants, the Panthers, and the Raiders. Those are wins, my friends. They're going to beat the Giants, they're going to beat the Panthers, and they're going to beat the Raiders. So even if they lose to the Bucs, to the San Francisco 49ers next week, and they drop to 4-6, in 3 weeks' time, I think we are having a conversation about the 7-6 Buccaneers heading to play the Chargers. Now, at that point, if they're on a 3-game winning streak, who knows what happens? I take the Chargers today, but who knows what the Chargers are going to look like in a month, and who knows what the Bucs are going to look like in a month. If the Bucs are coming off a 3-game winning streak and they got all the momentum on their side, I don't know. But if they lose that game to the Chargers, now they're back to 7-7. And they close out their season in Dallas and then at home with the Panthers and at home with the Saints. You could argue if they lose to the Niners, they handle business against the Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Panthers again, the Saints. All they have to do to win 10 games this season is either beat the Cowboys or beat the Chargers, assuming they lose to the Niners this week. I would take those odds. I am taking those odds. I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win 10 football games. I don't know if they're going to lose for sure to the San Francisco 49ers. They might. I don't know who I'm going to pick in that game yet. Mo and I haven't gotten that far. But you start looking out at their season, and even if they lose to the Niners next week and they go 4-6, I'm taking them versus the Giants. I'm taking them versus the Panthers. I'm taking them versus the Raiders. I'm taking them their last 2 games versus the Panthers and the Saints. That's 5 wins right there. That's 9 wins total. That means the only thing that would stand between the Bucs and a 10-win season is a away game against the Chargers and a home game versus the Dallas Cowboys, which I believe is on a Sunday night football game. If that's what we're looking at, I'm taking the Bucs to win 10 games. Because I don't think they're going to lose to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys are not playing good football this year. If they lose to the Chargers and Dallas ends up being probably what stands in their way, I'm taking the Bucs. So that brings us to this question. Should Tampa Bay have gone for 2? Because that's what we do, right? We sit here the day after a game and we look at the end result of the game and we say, well, they lost in overtime. You shouldn't give the ball back to Mahomes. You shouldn't risk the ball going back to Mahomes. It wasn't a sure thing. You didn't know if you were going to touch the ball in overtime. The way that the Chiefs were playing in the second half of that game, the way that offense was playing, the way DeAndre Hopkins was playing, how could you roll the dice? Why not just go for it right then and there and go for 2? Well, Todd Bowles was asked the same exact question after the game last night. And he talked about a couple of things. First of all, he talked about the field conditions. He thought that it was a little slick out there. He didn't quite like the field conditions. I don't know if I buy into that one per se, but okay, that's fine. If that's how you feel about it. And his other answer to the question was he felt that they could stop the Chiefs on defense if they needed to in overtime. Again, feel how you want to feel about him saying that. But at the end of the day, he had confidence in his defensive unit. And he had confidence that if his offense got the ball, they could do enough in overtime to win the football game. I have no issue with that. You can sit here and say, do the sure thing, right? Go for 2. What if they don't get it? What if they don't get it for 2? Now what? Game over? Or what if they do get it? It wasn't like they scored that touchdown with 3 seconds to go. I believe they scored it with 35 seconds left to go in the game. So had they gone up by 1, they give the ball back to the Chiefs. It's going to be a touchback. So you give the ball back to the Chiefs with 35 seconds, and I don't know how many timeouts they had at the time. But we've seen that story. We've seen how that plays out. We've seen how Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are different in the 2-minute offense. Would he not be criticized for that? I look at these decisions, and some of them in the moment, you're like, yes, you gotta do what you gotta do. I take a look at the Dolphin game from this past weekend, and had the Dolphins scored with a little less time on the clock and they had the chance to go for 2, maybe they should have, right? Because you're looking at a situation where they had struggled to stop Josh Allen on defense for basically the entire game. So what are the odds that they give the ball back to Josh Allen, they're going to be able to get a stop? I get that. I understand that. But you look at this game, and the Bucs defense had some success against Mahomes. Mahomes had more momentum in the second half than he did in the first half. So I get it. I understand where the confidence comes from. And I'm not a big fan of sitting here the day after and looking at the end result and then using the end result to say, well, you never know. At least you would have had a chance to win. Because these coaches are making these decisions in real time. They're not making them knowing what the outcome is going to be. We can all sit around here the day after and know that the Bucs lost. So if they went for 2, at least they would have had a chance to. We know that. That's BS. He's got to make that decision in the moment. And in the moment, he didn't like the field conditions. In the moment, he liked his defense to stop the Chiefs from scoring a touchdown. In the moment, he liked his offense if they got the ball first and they won the toss. So he went for it. And he said, kick it, let's go to overtime. And that's what they did. As far as the Chiefs are concerned, DeAndre Hopkins had a great game last night. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we're looking at 27-year-old DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're looking at a DeAndre Hopkins that is going to be the best wide receiver in the NFL for the second half of the season. Statistically, though, he's going to put up some numbers. What I'm saying is you're giving Patrick Mahomes a consistent wide receiver that is going to do good things on this offense. And that's what he's been missing the last couple of years. Patrick Mahomes doesn't need Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes doesn't need the explosive piece that is going to take the top off a defense and is always going to be an X factor to potentially score a touchdown on every single play. It was great when he had Tyreek Hill. It was great when he had that guy. But Patrick Mahomes is the type of quarterback where he doesn't need that guy to do certain things. What Patrick Mahomes needs is he needs a guy. He needs a guy who can be consistent. He needs a guy who, when they get down there in the red zone, he can go to consistently and is going to make big plays in the red zone. He needs a guy that when they need a 3rd and 6, he knows that that guy is going to be there to get him the 3rd and 6. He needs a guy where if it's one-on-one on the outside, man-to-man coverage, and he throws a 50-50 ball, in his mind, his guy is going to come down with it more than 50-50. That's what he needs. And that's exactly what he has in DeAndre Hopkins. He doesn't have a burner on the outside. He doesn't have the take it off the top, take the ceiling off the defense, Tyreek Hill explosive play guy. He's got consistency. He's got experience, and he's got someone that defenses need to pay attention to, not because they play for the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes is throwing them the football, but because of who they are as a receiver. That's what he has in DeAndre Hopkins, and that's what he is going to take advantage of for the rest of this season. And that is why you have to look at the Kansas City Chiefs, and what you have to actually ask yourself this morning, and I think this is a very fair question, are the Chiefs going to go undefeated? But Chris, we're halfway through the season. What are you talking? I want you to sit down right now, and I want you to ask yourself, are the Chiefs going to go undefeated this season? Because let's go through the schedule. And let's start talking about what they have left. Because I want you to honestly tell me where the L is going to come from on this schedule. Okay? Because I know what you're gonna say. I know what you're gonna circle right now. And you're gonna say, well, I don't want to hear well. I want to hear the deed to your house is on the line. I want to hear $1 million in a briefcase in front of you. You're taking one of these games. Which one are you taking? Because we can sit here and go well all day. I can sit here and look at the Chiefs' remaining schedule and what they got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Where am I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 games left. I can sit here and probably go well for 5 or 6 of them. We're not talking about well. We're talking about who is actually going to beat the Chiefs this season. Who would you put money on? Who would you actually buy into? Yes, I think they are a legitimate threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's take a look. So next week they got a home game versus the Broncos. Well, the Broncos they're playing well. They're 5-4. Yeah, they just got steamrolled by the Baltimore Ravens. The Broncos just realized at 5-3 that playing the 5-3 Ravens at the time, they don't match up. The Broncos are also going to realize that even though they're 5-4 and they have a winning record in their division, they're not in the stratosphere of the Kansas City Chiefs. So that right there, that is a no. That is a hard no. So it's not going to be the Denver Broncos. So let's move on, shall we? Is it going to be after the Broncos, you got Buffalo Bills? This is interesting. It's in Buffalo. Sunday, November 17th, 425 game. This might be the one. This might be the one where you look at it and go, of the remaining teams on the Chiefs' schedule, this is the one you have to look at and be like, maybe. Because it's on the road. It's in Buffalo. You know how those Bills fans get up for Buffalo home games. The Bills are apparently going to run away with their division, which means the next thing they're going to look at is seeding in the AFC. The Bills already have a couple of losses, so the best thing that they can root for is they beat the Chiefs. That's loss number one for the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs drop one more down the road somewhere. They end up tied, and that's Buffalo's path to the number one seed in the AFC. I know it's a lot, but that door does open a little bit if Buffalo can knock off Kansas City Sunday, November 17th. I don't think they can. I don't think that the Bills are going to be able to do that. I think that is going to be a hyped up game. I think that is going to get a lot of attention, and I think that is going to be a Josh Allen letdown game. Because say what you want about Josh Allen, say what you want about how he has been playing this season. For me, I look at Josh Allen, and I think that when you put him against a Patrick Mahomes, and I don't know. You can call it my Dolphin bias if you want. But I think that in that game, we see Allen a couple turnovers. I don't think the Bills do it. They could, though. If the Chiefs get past the Bills, it's the Panthers. That's a win. It's the Raiders. That's a win. It's a home game versus the Chargers in the first week of December. Maybe. The last time they played in Los Angeles, it was only a 7-point Chiefs victory. Maybe. But I think the Chiefs are going to take care of business against the Chargers. Then what do we got? The Browns. That's a win. At home versus the Texans. I'm not very high on the Texans anyways. I think that's a win. They do go to Pittsburgh in December, Christmas Day. Okay. I like the Pittsburgh defense. I think Russell Wilson works in the Pittsburgh offense. Is that the second best chance for the Chiefs to lose a game after Buffalo? Maybe. I like the chances of the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Chiefs Christmas Day in Pittsburgh better than I like the chance of the Los Angeles Chargers beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead a couple of weeks prior. So if you want me to rank who I think has the best chance to beat the Chiefs, I'm going to go Buffalo number 1 in 2 weeks in Buffalo. I'm going to go the Steelers number 2, the second to last game of the season on Christmas Day in Pittsburgh. And then if you had to press me, I think the only other threat on their schedule, because I'm not going to say the Houston Texans, because I don't think the Texans match up well against them. I'm going to say the Chargers, December 8th in Arrowhead. But I don't even like that pick because I think the Chiefs are going to win that game by double digits. So I'm going to say Bills and Steelers. I think those are the only two games. Oh, by the way, they finish in Denver. Not concerned. So you're looking at the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 8-0. They got 9 games left. 9 games stand between the Kansas City Chiefs and an undefeated season. Who is going to beat them? If they get past Buffalo in 2 weeks, in Buffalo, which I think they're going to, Bills fans are going to disagree, but if they get past Buffalo in 2 weeks, I think the only other team on that schedule that I would personally be concerned about are the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day. More because of the Steelers' defense than the Steelers' offense. But who knows? Maybe at that point, Russ because I'm not saying the Steelers' offense is bad right now by any stretch. I'm just saying that if you're going apples for apples, I'm taking the Chiefs' offense over the Steelers' offense But the Steelers' offense could look completely different by Christmas Day. Russ has only started a couple of games. So it could be a well-oiled machine come December 25th, and we're having a different conversation about the Pittsburgh Steelers, because not only would their defense be clicking on all cylinders, maybe their offense at that point is also clicking on all cylinders, and now we're in a whole different stratosphere. We'll see. But if you ask me today, got to give an answer, Chris. Who is going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Buffalo would be my number one choice. 2 weeks. And if they get past Buffalo, which I think they're going to, I don't think they face another tough challenge until the second to last game, at which point they would be 15-0 going into that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. That would be the next one where I go, maybe. But outside of that, I think you have to seriously ask yourself right now, are the Kansas City Chiefs going to go undefeated? And I think it is a legitimate possibility. All right, let's talk about a couple of other NFL things here before we switch topics completely, shall we? There was a firing in the NFL yesterday. Dennis Allen lost his job with the New Orleans Saints. If you are a Saints fan, this is almost a long time coming. Mo and I have talked about this previously. The NFL Genius has been on here and talked about this. We were kind of all surprised that he still had his job coming into this season. We kind of thought Dennis Allen was going to lose his job last season. We even talked about Dennis Allen losing his job at the end of the season previous. But he didn't. He survived. He made it through. It hasn't been pretty. It has not been pretty this season. I know that Derek Carr has missed some time. They got off to that great 2-0 start there in New Orleans. And since then, it has been an absolute train wreck. I know that losing Derek Carr was part of it, but even before they lost Derek Carr, they were losing football games. I think you're looking at a situation, I think it's fair to say, you're looking at a situation with the Saints where they hung a big number on a Dallas Cowboy defense and a Dallas Cowboy team that just isn't very good. So let's start there, because remember, when it happened initially at the start of the season, it was all shock and awe, right? It was all shock and awe when the Saints come out week number 2, because week number 1, they dropped 47 on the Panthers, right? Week number 1, they dropped 47 on the Panthers, 47-10. You're like, oh, okay. We figured the Saints were going to be middle of the road. They got a weak division. We don't know what Kirk Cousins is going to be. We don't know how Baker is going to respond this season. They come out, they rough up the Panthers. You're like, okay, all right. Maybe that's more of the Panthers than it is the Saints. Let's see what happens next week when the Saints go and play the Dallas Cowboys. Well, then they drop 44 on the Dallas Cowboys. Now the Saints are 2-0. They're averaging, 46 points a football game. And you're like, oh, shoot. Okay. Now we got something going here. And then you look at their schedule and you're like, well, we're about to find out, because they got the Eagles coming up. They got a division game with the Falcons. They got the Chiefs. They got a division game with the Buccaneers. Their next 4 games, we're going to see, right? We're going to see what exactly the Saints are. Well, we saw what the Saints were. I know they lost Derek Carr in there, but they lose to the Eagles in a close football game. They lose to the Falcons in a close football game. Then they get doubled up by the Chiefs. They get blown out by the Buccaneers in a game that they were really competitive in until, late in the third quarter. They get steamrolled a couple of weeks ago by the Denver Broncos. They get roughed up 2 weeks ago by the Chargers. Weren't really competitive in either of those games. And then they inexcusably lose to a Carolina Panthers team that they absolutely destroyed week 1 in the season. And their season's over. I mean, they haven't got their 8th loss yet. That's still my measuring stick. So I will say that if they go on a run here and they win out, they could very well make the playoffs. But that's not going to happen. I think they're going to pick up that 8th loss next week or this upcoming week when they play the Falcons, which means in my book, in Chris's book of are we making the playoffs or not, the answer for the Saints will officially be no after they lose to the Falcons this week. And yeah, if you're Dennis Allen, it's time to go. It was really time to go at the end of last season, and they kept you around. So you got another 9 games out of it. Congratulations. And it just didn't go well for you this season. What's ironic in all of this is the second time that Dennis Allen has been fired with Derek Carr as his starting quarterback. So that's tough. But it's something that probably should have happened at the end of last season. So here we are. So Dennis Allen's going to head out. Hopefully he's going to find greener pastures, and we'll see what happens. And of course, we talked yesterday about the Las Vegas Raiders cleaning house a little bit. Not their head coach, also offensive line coach, quarterback coach, offensive coordinator Luke Getsy gets canned. Are we just setting up for them to eventually fire Antonio Pierce? I think so. You basically just took away not all, but some of the critical pieces of his staff. And you want to sit here and tell me his job is safe? I don't even think they wanted Antonio Pierce to be the coach this season. I thought they undermined Antonio Pierce for the entire offseason leading into this season. So I always kind of thought that Antonio Pierce was kind of a lame duck, even though he wasn't technically a lame duck this season. And I think that them firing his offensive coordinator and some of the other pieces of his staff further proves that. But we'll see. We'll see when the season ends what the Raiders decide to do. But here we are. We are at the midway point in the season. We got the trade deadline happening today. And this is what we're looking at. We are looking at teams shaking things up. We are looking at our team is going to make moves today. You have the Lions make a huge trade this morning to pick up a defensive piece coming out of Cleveland. Who else is going to make a move? Who else is going to get into the space where they are going to prove that they are contenders and take advantage before the trade deadline? We'll see. We'll see what happens moving forward today. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we got some Major League Baseball stuff that we are going to discuss, and we have some WWE news that we are going to discuss as well. All of that and more. We're coming back here in about 15 seconds. Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network, and we'll see you back here in 15 seconds.
You're listening to Coffee and Sports from Wire to Wire Sports Network on the national streaming sports Roku channel.
Welcome back. It is Coffee and Sports brought to you by Wire to Wire Network. Guys, thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine this morning. So we got a little Major League Baseball to discuss here. We got some weirdness. I'm going to call it weirdness because I can. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm allowed to make fun of my team if I want to. So Garrett Cole, by the way, not a shock. So for all of you non-Yankee people out there who clutched your pearls when Garrett Cole opted out of his deal with the Yankees, I want you to understand that as a Yankee fan, we expected this to happen. The thought process going into this season was that Cole's probably going to opt out at the end of the year. He's going to force the Yankees' hand to give him that additional year on his contract and turn his 4-year deal into a 5-year deal and pick up an extra $36 million in the process. We all assumed that was going to happen because in our minds, why not? If you're Garrett Cole, why not do that? Why not get yourself an extra $36 million deal, lock yourself into the next 5 years, and then probably call it a career after that. That was kind of what we thought was going to happen. When he opted out a couple of days ago, none of us in Yankee land were surprised. Anyone that actually followed the New York Yankees, anyone that actually paid attention to New York Yankee baseball, there was no shock and awe on our end. Now, there was shock and awe everywhere else. I saw people, he's going to go to the Dodgers. Cole's going to be a Dodger. He's going to... Guys, he was never going to hit free agency. Because as soon as he opted out, the following stories were the Yankees have until Sunday night. They're going to give him the extra year, and it's going to go from a 4-year deal to a 5-year deal, and they're going to add the $36 million to it. That was the immediate conversation from all the Yankee insiders. But what we didn't think was going to happen was Gerrit Cole reversed his mindset and decided to opt back in, meaning that nothing happened. Essentially, we erased the opt-out. So when he opts back in, he doesn't get the extra money. He doesn't get the extra year. And it's almost like he never chose to opt out in the first place. So he's still a Yankee. He's still on his current deal. So he still has 4 seasons left on his deal. And the world keeps on spinning. So why does he opt back in? What's the point in doing that? Well, there's a couple of things that could happen. He could be looking for the Yankees to restructure his deal, and maybe they're going to tack on a year down the road somewhere. He could be looking at the upcoming free agency market and thinking to himself, maybe I do my part and give the Yankees whatever little bit of financial flexibility that I think I can offer them so they can, keep that one player that's going to be courted and swooned by all 29 other teams. Maybe that's what he's looking at. Maybe he just thought it wasn't a good look, opting out just to get the $36 million. There's many reasons, guys. But anyone who thought that Gerrit Cole was not going to be a Yankee just because he chose to opt out, you weren't paying close attention to what was going on. And another person who isn't paying close attention to what is going on is Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly, who is a relief pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. He went on a radio show yesterday, and he decided, by the way, he didn't pitch in the postseason for the Dodgers. He's injured right now. So he had absolutely no bearing on this team winning a world championship. I'm going to open with that. So you know the trend this conversation is going to go in. Joe Kelly goes on a talk show yesterday, and he decides that he is going to rip the New York Yankees. He is going to say that the New York Yankees were the worst team in the playoffs this season. He went as far to say that if you were to re-rank all of the teams in the playoffs this season, the Yankees would rank last of all the teams that qualified for the playoffs. So let's start here. Number one, Joe Kelly, no one gives a damn what you have to say. You are literally the kid that did nothing, and you are going to be considered a champion because you happen to be on the roster for the team that won it all, and you weren't there for it. So what are you doing? Number two, your comments are asinine because you're talking about a team in the New York Yankees that had the best record in the American League. You are talking about a team in the New York Yankees that won 2 series to get into the World Series. And they were not 2 series that all came down to game 5s and game 7s. They lost 1 game to the Royals. They lost 1 game to the Guardians. And then they rolled into the World Series. So you could sit here and say that the Yankees were the worst team that you faced if that's your opinion. If you want to say that the Mets are a better team than the Yankees, if you want to say the Padres are a better team than the Yankees, okay, fine. You feel free to say that. You played against all those teams. But for you to sit here unprovoked and just say the New York Yankees are the worst team in the playoffs this season, and then to take it one step further and say that if I re-ranked all of the teams that qualified for the playoffs, the Yankees would be dead last. You're just looking for the smoke, my friend. You are just looking for the headline. You are looking for relevancy, and you don't got it. Joe Kelly, go back into the hole, get your shoulder better, go call yourself a world champion, even though you were not a single part of anything that happened for your team to win the championship in the playoffs this season, and just be happy. Be happy with it. Because you coming out here and throwing shots for no reason, it's not a good look, my guy. It's not a good look. Get your ring. I'm assuming you get a ring. I know you weren't on the active roster, but I think everyone that's on the team gets a ring. So take your ring, feel like you did something even though you didn't, and move on. Because you're throwing shots here yesterday that don't need to be thrown, JoJo. And I don't know what we're doing, but it's not a good look, my guy. It's not a good look. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up with this. WWE just held a premium live event in Saudi Arabia, and it's always the same old song and dance when we go to Saudi Arabia. The people who complain are the people who are going to complain. They make it political. They talk about how it derails storylines. They talk about how the event always has matches that just don't seem to add up and seem to be contrived just for the show. Yeah, that's literally exactly how that works. The Crown Jewel event, like if you think about storytelling and you think about episodic TV, like episodic TV, the way it works is you have a season. Right, you're a TV show, you have a season 6. And in season 6, there's going to be 20 episodes. And you're going to cut them in half, and you're going to go 1 through 10, and you're going to go 11 through 20. And you're going to say, by the midway point, we got to get here. And by the end point, we got to get here. And along the way, these 7 things are going to happen. And that's why season 6 is going to be a great season for this TV show. Now, a little more hectic in WWE because unlike a season of a TV show, most TV show seasons are anywhere from 10 to 20, 22, 24 episodes. WWE is a nonstop, reoccurring episodic event that happens every single week. There is no time off. So a little more nuanced than a TV show. But in WWE, everything builds on the previous. So you hit the Royal Rumble, it's the start to the road to WrestleMania. Everything is building show after show. After WrestleMania season, you're still building show after show. Obviously, you have your big stops along the way. Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. That's where you get your long-term planning. You have less important premium live events along the way. But everything is a build on top of each other. Except for Crown Jewel. Crown Jewel is the outlier. It's the outlier because it is literally a show that is planned by somebody else. In case you don't know this, and this is documented, this is not me just making this up or presuming, it is common knowledge that the Saudi show is heavily influenced by what and I don't know the inner workings of the titles. I think it's a prince. I could be wrong. But whoever runs that country, whatever group of people is in power over there, They love wrestling. They pay for this show to go over there, and they heavily influence what is on the card. That's why you see things like Goldberg come out of retirement and have matches in Saudi Arabia. That's why you see things like Logan Paul get one-off WWE championship matches in Saudi Arabia. That's why you see things like the Brothers of Destruction reuniting to take on the reuniting D-Generation X in Saudi Arabia. Because it's literally being fantasy booked by the leadership in Saudi Arabia. That's why it seems like the storytelling aspect and the episodic aspect of WWE kind of gets derailed when Crown Jewel comes up every year, because it does. Because there's going to be things that take place at the Crown Jewel event that are not going to translate into storylines before and after Crown Jewel. And then if you're WWE, you do the best you can to interweave it all together, which, by the way, I think they did a better job this year than they've done in previous years to make the storytelling stay as cohesive as possible, right? Because you have to almost pivot and start to build a few things just to then leave them shortly thereafter. So you have to pivot and start building this Cody Rhodes and Gunther feud, knowing that you're going to leave it very quickly afterwards. You have to pivot and start building this Nia Jax, Liv Morgan feud, only to then have to leave it shortly thereafter so those characters can go back onto the trajectory they're meant to be on after the Saudi event. So anyone who is sitting here after Crown Jewel saying, oh, it felt disjointed, if this was a little, it always does. It always does. It is an outlier in WWE storytelling, and it's always going to be an outlier, because how can it not be when you have it literally being a fantasy booked show? That being said, the show itself was not bad. There were some moments that were I thought the women's match, the tag team match, was out of this world. The Liv Morgan match was a little overbooked at the end. I thought the Seth Rollins stuff was good. I liked the fact that it was a clean finish with Cody and Gunther. There were some good things that happened in the show. But as you move on from Crown Jewel, you then have to get back into where are we going next? And that led us to Monday Night Raw last night. Damian Priest is going to be getting a title shot against Gunther, and I feel bad. I feel bad for Priest because I think this was a misstep by WWE. Obviously, Gunther is not going to lose the belt to Priest. I don't think Priest has any real credibility right now. I think that the whole breakup with Judgment Day, him losing the world title, I know they're trying to make him still seem like a main event person. I know they're trying to still make him seem credible. They're trying to still make him seem like he is a threat. I thought they were barely doing that with him as world champion. And now with him not as world champion and not with a dominant stable, he's going to get fed. He's going to get fed to Gunther. I think Sheamus would have been better in that spot. I think that Sheamus would have put on a banger of a match with Gunther, and he could have lost clean, and it would have been fine. I think Dominic Mysterio would have been more interesting in that spot, because even though you know in the back of your mind he's going to lose, right? Like, he's not going to beat Gunther. But then at the same time, in the back of your mind, you're like, would they do it? Would they put the belt on Dom? He does have Judgment Day. You know they're probably going to... Would they do that? It's intriguing, right? It's intriguing. Even though you know there's like a 99% chance he's going to lose, the 1% with Dominic is a lot more interesting than the 1% with Damian Priest. because nothing about Damian Priest beating Gunther is intriguing to me. But you look at a guy like Dominic Mysterio, and that's intriguing. That's interesting from a storytelling aspect. That's interesting. That's captivating TV right there. And then, of course, Seth Rollins. He was there to further the Bronson Reed stuff, which I thought was very well done. So you can almost remove Seth Rollins from that match. He was never going to win that match. And then you look at the three people that they could have went with, and I think that I get why Priest, because from a storytelling point, he does need the rematch. He does need to have a decisive ending to his to a championship match there with Gunther. I just think that it was the least interesting of the three choices, and it's going to result in the least interesting match of the three choices. All right, guys, that is going to bring us to a close here on a Tuesday. Thank you so much for making Coffee and Sports part of your daily routine. Mo and I are coming back at you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. We're going to break down the NBA tomorrow, and we're going to talk about who is a contender and who is a pretender at the early part of the NBA season. Most teams have already played 7 or 8 games, and we're kind of getting a look at what teams kind of are shaping up to be at the early onset of the season. And there's some surprises out there. So Mo and I are going to go through the NBA standings tomorrow, and we're going to talk about what is happening. Who should we get gassed up for, and who are we going to be let down by? Then, of course, we have the NFL trade deadline happening today. So we'll see if there's any other big moves besides what Detroit did this morning as far as movement in the NFL. Are we going to see any fire sales today? Are we going to see any surprising names move today? We'll break down all of that and more. Guys, Coffee and Sports, it's the morning show powered by Wire to Wire Network. And we'll see all of you back here